My name is Leora Hale. I'm 27 and I live in Chicago. I had just spent 2 weeks visiting my sister in New York, and after a long trip, I was finally heading home. I boarded the last train of the night at Penn Station, exhausted but relieved to be on my way back. The train was nearly empty, just a few scattered passengers, all looking just as tired as I felt. I took a window seat near the back of my car, letting out a sigh. The rhythmic sound of the train moving over the tracks was oddly soothing, and for a moment, I considered closing my eyes. But then something caught my attention. At the far end of the car, near the door connecting to the next, was a compartment. A small, metal door marked with a sign, "Out of Service." It looked different from the rest, older, worn down. Something about it felt off. Maybe it was the way the sign looked freshly placed. Or maybe it was the tiny dent marks near the lock, as if someone had tampered with it before. I told myself to ignore it. It was late. I was tired, but my curiosity kept nagging at me. Why was a locked compartment here, in a passenger car? After a few minutes of debating with myself, I got up and walked towards it. I glanced around. No one was watching. The lock was basic, almost flimsy. I had a bobby pin in my pocket, and before I even thought it through, I was picking at it. A soft click, and the door creaked open. A wave of stale air hit me as I stepped inside. The space was small and dark, barely enough to stand in. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and then I saw it, a suitcase sitting against the back wall. It was old, leather, and worn. My heart pounded as I bent down and unlatched it. Inside, there were Polaroid pictures. Hundreds of them, scattered haphazardly. I picked up one. It was a man, sleeping on a train. The next was a woman, slumped against a window, eyes closed. Each had a date and time scribbled on the bottom. Some were from weeks ago, some from months. But then I saw the last photo in the pile. It was me. I was sitting in my seat, wearing the same clothes, my head slightly turned as if I had just noticed something. The timestamp was from 10 minutes ago. A cold wave of terror rushed through me. My hands shook as I dropped the photo back into the suitcase. My breath came out in short gasps, and then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I turned to see a man standing in the doorway. He was tall, dressed in a train conductor's uniform. His name tag read, Garrick Rove, but something about him was wrong. His face was too stiff. His smile stretched unnaturally wide, like it had been forced there. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed at me to run. He took a step forward, blocking the exit. I grabbed the suitcase and threw it at him, buying myself a split second to bolt past him and into the passenger car. The train jolted as I ran. The other passengers, what few there were still asleep, oblivious. I had no time to wake them. I sprinted down the car, past the rows of empty seats, past the indifferent faces of strangers lost in their dreams. Garrick was behind me. I could hear his footsteps, the way he wasn't rushing, but somehow still closing the distance. My only option was to get off, but the train was moving fast. I reached the emergency door, yanking at the handle. It wouldn't budge. My breath came in frantic gasps as I turned to see him, just feet away now. "You don't get to leave," he whispered. I did the only thing I could. I flung myself against the door with everything I had. It burst open, and suddenly, I was weightless. The rush of cold air, the deafening sound of the train speeding past, the impact of my body hitting the hard gravel. I barely processed any of it. Pain shot through my side, but I was alive. I lay there in the darkness, watching the train disappear into the night. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it might burst. For a long time, I didn't move. I just breathed. Days passed. I tried to convince myself it was over. But then, A package arrived at my apartment. No return address. No markings, just a plain box. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single Polaroid. It was Garrick. He was slumped in the locked compartment, his unnatural smile gone, his eyes open but lifeless. The date and timestamp were from the night I escaped, and below it, a note. Your turn is coming.